What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff, arm yourselves, typology stuff. We're talking a bit today about FE bullshitting, and we're also experimenting with the more restricted advertising filters because you are allowed to swear within the first 30 seconds on YouTube. You're allowed to have swears in your thumbnails and in your titles, as long as you mark everything correctly. Though I'm not sure how that will affect the analytics, we're gonna find out. And while we will talk about FE bullshitting, we're also thinking about what it means to have and use an inferior function. It all ties together. Now, FE bullshitting is a method of FE application that took me a while to figure out. Though I have a strong suspicion higher level FE types or higher order FE types do this normally. FE bullshitting is the process by which you engage someone in a conversation they find meaningful while you are on autopilot. Maybe it feels different for higher level FE types, but at least for me, FE inferior, I can feel when someone is not enjoying a conversation. And while that feeling does have an emotional aspect to it, as in, I feel bad that you are not enjoying this conversation, there's also an awareness of consequences of someone's not enjoying a conversation. In other words, even in basic conversations, you stand to lose a lot and sometimes gain a lot, but even when you don't gain a lot, you still stand to gain something if you do it right. And what I mean by doing it right is giving someone the feeling they want out of this conversation. Knowing all this, you can't just not try in a conversation because you stand to lose something, and usually it'll be substantial. You think one mediocre conversation won't have an effect, it will. But at the same time, actively using FE to accomplish your goals in a conversation, there are two ways that will maybe not go wrong, but it'll take more from you than you give, and you're trying to maximize efficiency here. First, using FE actively, especially if you're an FE inferior, is exhausting. It feels like you're doing more than just having a conversation when you are trying to make the conversation good, or you're trying to care in a situation or with a person you don't care about. You can do it, but it's exhausting. And my theory on why it's so exhausting is conversation, when you're trying to game it, is so much more than just talking. And when I say game it, I don't mean it in a manipulating people sense. I mean specifically trying to make someone feel like you've just had a they've just had a positive interaction with you. They've just had a conversation they can feel good about. You can do it positively. It's still exhausting. Oh, and the other way it can go wrong, and actually it would be going wrong, is overdoing it. If someone feels that you are trying to please them, as in there is nothing authentic about this conversation, you'll accomplish the opposite. And that's another thing, you might not see the consequences of that immediately, but you will see them, you will feel them. And when you're trying to do this positively, that can be crushing, because you've taken extra effort to try to make this person feel understood or make them feel happy, what have you, and they hate you for it. And dumb motherfuckers will say things like, well, just be yourself then. Nobody likes yourself. Everybody likes themselves. You're welcome to try going around and being totally yourself with everyone at all times. I'll tell you from experience that doesn't end well. And this all is where FE bullshitting comes in. how do you accomplish your social goals without dedicating that much energy and attention to a conversation? Well, there isn't a step by step method, but I think when you are practicing socialization and you start to gain some knowledge about what people are, the things you learn and the strategies you develop and deploy start to deploy automatically on a level you don't need to think about. So, my example, or my form of FE bullshitting, because again, I think this will be unique to every type, every FE type. The first thing I do is get a read on somebody, stereotype them. People are very easy to stereotype, and you should stereotype them, at least in a way that you aren't showing your hand. People can and will surprise you, but if you're trying to maximize efficiency or maximize gain for the least effort you put in, stereotyping is very important because a lot of people won't surprise you. Then you figure out what they want. And it's interesting because what people say they want, it's usually things or they want something done, and they might actually want those things, but more what they want is some kind of affirmation. They want whatever they've been feeling recently to be affirmed. Examples: if someone wants to buy car parts so they can work on their car themselves, and they don't seem to be a mechanic, usually there will be anger at a mechanic in there, and that's what they want from you. They do want this thing from you, but they want the validation that some mechanic fucked them over and they have the know-how, they can do it. That's what they're actually looking for. Or another example, professional example. Someone comes around wanting to, or saying they want to talk work stuff, and they probably do, but you can feel their glum even if they aren't being overt about it. So you know some drama is going on in their lives and they're walking around with it, and what they really want, they might need to get the work stuff done, but what they really want is someone to validate the fact they exist within this drama of theirs and they're right in this drama of theirs. Everyone wants to feel seen and heard and understood, and that's why I recommend you do some kind of content creation, whether that's videos or like one commenter's at a blog or something, so you can satisfy your need to feel seen and heard and understood without opening yourself up to attack or carrying around this vulnerability. Walking around feeling like you aren't seen or understood or heard is like walking around really horny. It's not only distracting to you, it's also a problem because people can see it and it will be off-putting to them. Your emotional needs as a human being will be off-putting to them because that's your problem, not their problem. And that goes for these people who talk about these social responsibilities and wanting to help everybody and all this shit. It makes them feel good to talk about that, but if you ever try taking someone up on that offer if they're like that, it's a bad idea. And it's even worse trying that with someone who acts like they want to be emotionally supportive, because they don't. And if you tried that with a neutral person, they would just not care or be negative, and that would be the end of it. But when you do this with one of these empathy people, again, that's not what they want, but they need to feel that way about themselves. So when they are having a negative reaction to being asked to fulfill the role they act like they want to fulfill for people, they can't stop thinking that about themselves, thinking positively about themselves, so they will find problems with you. I'm still a positive, empathetic person. It's just that that person is really fucked up and there's a problem with them. Find a consistent, satisfying way to meet your needs so you aren't walking around with this shit in your pants. Anyway, you identify what the person actually wants, what they want from a conversation with you. Or with somebody. It doesn't really matter. You aren't important in this. You are just two holes in your head for them. And then what you do is you ask questions adjacent to what you're pretty sure they're actually concerned about. If you go straight for what you've identified is wrong, I don't know why, but there's this instinct in people to pull back and get offended. But if you instead ask questions around what you've noticed, you're opening a door and usually people will walk through it. And even if they don't walk through it, this is another thing. Even if someone chooses not to open up about whatever's going on, usually they'll be appreciative that you noticed something was wrong and you'll feel it later. You'll feel that you noticed from them later. And then what happens when they walk through the door, when they start to open up, they go. It's weird. It feels like they've walked into a different dimension because what they want from you, I think, is something that's detached from normality, which is why they haven't been able to talk about it with anybody. So when they open up, it'll be completely outside anything you're really equipped to comment on. You can't see the faces I'm making. And I tell you this now because almost certainly you won't be able to resolve their issue. And if you try to resolve their issue, which is fucking stupid, even if you can resolve their issue, don't try. Because once again, that's not what they're here for. They want to be validated. If they couldn't solve the problem or whatever it is on their own, and you present them a solution, even if it's the correct solution, you have invalidated them. And yes, stupid, this applies to the practical, pragmatic people, or people who think they're practical and pragmatic, rather. Just tell me what you think, and if it works, it works. No, stupid. That is not the way people work. If you're someone who walks around and tries to get into conversations like these so you can vent to strangers or people who don't want to hear it, then you're not the sort of person who will hear an answer and think good about that. So what do you do with this outside thing you can't, well, you shouldn't ever try to offer a solution on? What do you do? It's a question, or it's a comment and then a question. With the comment and then question, if you have a way you think you can relate generally, as in, yeah, I heard about something like that, she fucked him up, or, yeah, my dog died a few years ago, it was sad. Don't get into specifics, because if you do, now you are taking the focus away from them, and maybe they'll entertain you on it, but it's another thing that people don't like. When they're trying to tell their sob story, you interrupt them, they feel they're interrupted, and go into your own sob story. It's not good. You need to think of it not as actually relating with these people, but as signaling you are on their side in this without taking the spotlight from them. And you demonstrate that by asking a question to get them into more specifics. And if you don't have a story or anything like this, or an anecdote, little example, go straight into a question. Get details, get feelings, get whatever. Question. They will answer the question. And then the next thing you do, the next comment you make, again you're making them feel understood. You comment on what they want. Again, they want validation. You need to make them feel like it's natural to feel the way they feel. So you need to say either that's fucked up or that's great, whatever, something along those lines, an affirming statement. And this isn't a puzzle, you don't need to figure this out because they tell you as they're answering the question. If they tell you about a fucked up situation, you tell them that's fucked up, and you keep doing this as long as they want to do it. And this is what I mean by autopilot. Once you know how to deploy these strategies, they're automatic because the people give you everything. You don't need to plan a strategy for how to approach a person. They will come to you and tell you that they want to be approached, how they want you to approach them, and then you feed them what they give you. You can do this, you can have what to them feels like the deepest conversation they've had, the most understood they've felt in weeks, without thinking about it. And then, aside from the most obnoxious people, people will tucker themselves out. And even with those really obnoxious people, even if they want to keep going, they will run out of things to say because they aren't very deep. They don't have a lot going on. They can't. They now that they've got attention, they would love to hold you here forever. But even if they want to, they can't. And with those people, you'll know you've reached this state when they start trying to pivot the conversation in different directions. That's how you know when they're worn out, and even they know they're worn out. Now, a normal person, a better socialized person, will feel the lull and find some way to excuse themselves. Usually they'll thank you in some kind of way, say something nice, or just be positive. People are very happy when they have an interaction like this. They'll end it positively. You might need to encourage them, but that's not hard if you've done everything right. Hey, I gotta get back to what I'm doing, or hey, I have this thing going on. It was really nice speaking with you. For normally socialized people, that will usually be enough. For the less socialized people, you need to do that, but firmer. And one of the few good things that comes out of having a used car body is I need to piss all the time. And either people know that, or I'm not lying, because I probably do need to piss if you've been talking this long. Hey, I really need to use the restroom. Those other people in these moments will either depart at that moment, or if they're still there afterward, and some people are, going to piss kills the momentum of any conversation irreparably, which is good for you, and then you can deploy the polite exit. Now, you've just had a heartening conversation with someone, an uplifting conversation, a conversation that makes a person feel you're a friend and you don't know what they were talking about. That is FE bullshitting. TE has bullshitting too, but you know when a TE type is bullshitting you because they are using common socialized, I don't know how you would describe them, but conversation markers. Because again, TE is a social function. When they want a conversation to move briskly, they know how to prompt people in socially acceptable ways, commonly acceptable ways. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think even among TE types, you can tell when they're doing this. You're being prompted to get the fuck on with it. Or when they chime in, it won't be personalized, tailored to them. It will be common sentiments pulled out of a toolbox and dropped or applied to situations in which these tools are supposed to be applied. Breakup example. A TE type is more likely to say something along the lines of, there's plenty of fish in the sea, or an equivalent of it, like a hack. It's not, well, it is hack. I mean, that is definitionally hack, but in terms of socialization, that's what you say. Whereas an FE type applying FE will tell you whatever it is you want to hear. Both responses are vacuous, but one feels like a hack imposition and the other is a mirror, and people like mirrors. It's harder to tell when an FE type is bullshitting you. Because I think FE applied to an individual is intoxicating, if you're doing it right or if it's being done to you right. Not because the person is intoxicating, but because you're being indulged. Or you feel you're being indulged. You feel you're getting the special treatment you deserve. And this entire strategy is important for FE types especially for FE inferiors, not only because it's effective, and when it's automatic like this, you're less likely to fumble it and fuck up by getting your dirty hands in your own socializing, but also because manually operated FE is exhausting. Oh, and that's another thing. This automatic FE strategy is not 100% effective. If you deal with that person again and you've forgotten all of it, you're fucked. This is why I recommend you keep sheets, a conversation sheet. You know, because you know when you're doing this, and it will probably be important later. I spoke with this person on this date. These were the key things that came up. Also, even if you're doing it perfectly, you can be detected. And there isn't, at least in my experience, there isn't some typological answer to this. This is more of an essential answer. People who have something to them are more likely to pick up on this, regardless of type. And these people who have something about them, they're a lot like outsiders. We talked about this a long time ago. Just because you're both outsiders doesn't mean you have anything in common, and in fact, you probably shouldn't, or don't have anything in common and shouldn't get along. You both are outsiders for a reason. Just because someone has more to them doesn't mean they'll be on your side or you should want to know them on a better, more personal level. Usually that's trauma, in my experience. Traumatized people are better at picking up on this, and you should stay away from trauma people, especially if you're a trauma person. Anyway, when you feel you're being sniffed out, you need to swap into manual and pay attention. And that's exhausting, but at least you aren't doing that 24/7 with all people. And that, I don't know if I cut out the part where I started the segue and then backed into it. Now we segue into the next part of the video. Levels of FE. And maybe other functions. This is all guesswork, and I'm not sure if I've settled on it, but it's something I've been thinking about. I took a clarity piss and I thought about it for a moment. Why do I embed unrelated but important typology information either in the middle or at the end of videos that don't really have anything to do with it, or in other topic videos that don't have anything to do with it, and then I don't talk about it again, so this is the one spot you can go to find this information I've been working on. I don't know why I do that. Maybe because it's here, and if I don't say it now, then I might not get a chance to say it later. Maybe I like ensuring people who are down with the channel on the whole get the most information, but it's spread out. I don't know why. It's not a conscious thing. It just happens. Anyway, I have reason to believe function position does not have anything to do with that function's top speed. And top speed has nothing to do with outcome or direction. Example. Using TI as the example, I think an ITP and an EFJ can both match each other in TI. Or another way of looking at it, an EFJ can match an ITP's top speed in TI. And further, the TI DOM might have a very high TI top speed, but they could be racing straight into a wall. With your inferior function, or your lower functions, I don't think there's a skill ceiling, or a skill floor, or anything like that. You can raise your skill in that function to a competitively high level, even if it is your inferior. And you can certainly take efforts to see you're moving in a direction or in a productive direction with your function, getting the results you want. In essence, function position is three things. First, I think it's endurance. If your function is in a high spot, you'll have a high endurance for it. If it's an inferior spot, you'll have low endurance, and I have a feeling that's not something that you That's not something that you can change. Maybe you can increase it a little bit, but probably not a lot. Second thing is acceleration. How quickly you can raise your skill in this function. If the function is your dominant function, then you'll be able to you'll naturally increase it very quickly, and you'll be able to increase it even faster when you choose to. And that's an interesting thing I've been thinking about, is the fact some people have their dominant function and they don't work on it. Even your dominant function isn't a given. If you choose to focus on it, well, you think it's at a high level right now because that's the highest you know. It's your dominant function. You can push it even higher if you work on it. I don't know why that's not something people do. And then with your inferior function, your acceleration will be very slow. You can increase it, you can get it up to high top speeds. It'll take you a long time though. And then the third thing, which relates to that, level locking. That typology handout I like directing people to, it mentions function development in terms of age, as in you begin to develop your functions more seriously at different stages in your life. And in our example, we can imagine that as you age, increasing or raising your acceleration cap on your lower functions. So by the time you're 50, you'll be able to build out your inferior function at a high speed, again, if you choose to. If you haven't given up and just said, fuck it, I'm a slob of shit, I don't care about uplifting myself at 50, fuck it. If you choose not to be a piece of shit like that, the age it seems like people are very quick to close the door on themselves, that door is actually the most open to you. And I've been thinking about this for years. Can you start developing your inferior function earlier? Yes, I believe you can, definitely. But it really feels like those age gates are serious. As in, you can, let's say you're 20, you can start working on your inferior function right now, and you will make progress, but that doesn't change the XP gate on your development. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time working on my FE, and I made a little progress, but not a lot. Now that I'm still not, I forget what the age is, I think it's like late 30s is when that final gate goes away, and I'm sure even when it does go away, your acceleration still won't be as high as with your dominant function, but the limiters are for the most part off if you choose to develop it. You can still try to increase your top speed before that point, and you should, but it doesn't feel like that acceleration cap goes away. But you can feel it slowly starting to go away, but it's not off. Versus where I am in life right now, SI, holy shit, that's like my second dominant function. And I could feel that change as I reached the age the dumb handout said it would start happening. SI went from being a comfort function and an autism indicator to a weapon. To recap all this closing stuff, manually operating your inferior function will probably always be exhausting. Maybe you'll be able to develop a little bit of a tolerance for it, but probably not. Though your sophistication with it, in that time frame you can sprint with it, you'll be able to get a lot more done. If you choose to work on it, and as you age, working on it will become easier and easier. High top speed, but low endurance. And I think that's it for this one. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.